Welcome to Pieces for My Puzzle. I'm your host, Nikki Ship, and I'm excited to be sharing with you my life with a son on the spectrum. This podcast is for anyone who is looking for quick tips and perspective, but most of all, for hope and inspiration. So sit back, relax, and let's put the pieces together. Hello and welcome back to another episode of Pieces for My Puzzle. I'm your host, Nikki Ship. Thank you so much for joining us today. If you didn't get a chance to tune into last week's episode, please do. We had the wonderful Nicole Oak on the show, and she is a children's book author that has published a book recently called Penny Panda and the Gift of Possibility. So if you didn't get a chance to tune into that episode, please do. Some wonderful golden nuggets on how you can touch base more with your kids and talk to them more about emotional intelligence and processing their emotions, which I personally found extremely helpful for me in communication with my son, Drayson. This week, I am so excited to talk to one of my colleagues and friends, Russ Solomon. But before we delve into questions with Russ, I'm going to go ahead and tell you a little bit about him. From a really young age, Russ has been drawn to helping others. Friends would often seek him out for advice, but it was more than just problem solving for him. He felt a genuine calling to make a positive impact in people's lives. His journey began in his youth when his parents introduced him to mindfulness and wellness techniques like meditation, visualization, intention setting, and positive thinking. Fast forward to present day, he's a music therapist and a drum teacher who has connected with many children with autism. He has taken his career experience and created the InTune Parents program, which is about finding a healthier emotional space, tapping into your innate wisdom, strength, and clarity, and creating a balanced life despite the challenges that come our way. It's about reclaiming our own well-being so that you can be the best version of yourself for you and for your family. Please welcome Russ to the show. Thank you so much for being here, Russ.
Hello. Thank you so much. It's great to be here.
Yes, nice. I'm so excited. We've had so many other prior conversations, to recording this show, but I'm so excited to have you on the show because I think that you offer such valuable insight to help parents with processing their emotions, creating a harmonious balance in a daily life, especially with a special needs child. It can be super stressful. But tell us a little bit about yourself and how you decided to go into this avenue of work.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much for having me. I'm so thrilled to be here and to speak with you and your audience.
Thank you.
So let me just start off first just by being really specific about who I help and who I work with, because I think that will help to kind of frame everything. So basically, I help successful, heart-centered, spiritually minded parents of neurodiverse kids to eliminate stress and overwhelm so that they can show up in a healthy place and lead their families with love and through the heart rather than with frustration and overwhelm and struggle, even though we all feel that, many times. So I call that being in tune with yourself. And I know that we'll talk a little bit about that as we go along. So I always like to kind of just say who I help first, because there's I wish I can help everybody. But I can't. So right. I find being very specific. Yeah, being specific helps with that. So as you mentioned, thank you for the beautiful intro. I am a music therapist and a drum circle facilitator. And I spent most of my career working with people with dementia. And again, it was in my family life, and also both of my grandmas had dementia, and also it was in my career. So it was just part of my life. And after a while, I wanted to do something different because this work was really rewarding. It was beautiful, but it was heavy. It was my clients that I would work with were not going to get better, and so it was heavy work. And I thought about what else could I do? What else is possible? And so I started InTune Parents because I've got some relatives with special needs, and I knew that just from growing up in my family that there was a lot of stress and overwhelm and chaos that kind of surrounded this sometimes. And eventually, over time, I saw that there was a connection between the kind of stress that my family was experiencing and the way that I thought that music therapy, or the concepts of music therapy, could help bring harmony into our lives, to help bring some stress relief, some peace into our life. And so when eventually I realized that, I could bring together these experiences, all of my life experiences, not just from music therapy, but from drum circle facilitation, having to do
Mm-hmm.
with how people can work together, listen to each other, and other things that I've done, that just my personal journey on peacemaking and spirituality. I could bring all of that stuff together, blend it, and create something that could be pretty unique for other parents. So
Mm-hmm.
I called that InTune Parents. It comes from the music therapy background and being in tune.
That's awesome. That's such a cute name too. So what inspired you to shift from, working with adults with dementia to supporting parents of children with special needs? Was it an immediate thing, or was it just something that you were kind of gradually segued into? But what inspired you to go into that route?
Yeah. So what inspired me was my own family, and
Mm-hmm.
eventually realizing that the stuff that I knew about in my life, professionally and personally, could help them, could help,
Mm-hmm.
potentially could possibly help other people. Um, I learned when I was very young this technique about releasing and letting go of stress and overwhelm. And
Mm-hmm.
so bringing that together with again, like I say, the principles of music therapy, um, could be something that could be profoundly helpful to people so that they could be emotionally healthier and just live with more ease and joy. And hopefully from that place, that let's say emotional home base, parenting
Mm-hmm.
will become much easier compared to being in struggle and stress.
Right, right. Because I think all of us as parents feel that way on a daily basis sometimes,
Yeah.
depending on the situation or the scenario. How important do you feel that it is creating a harmonious home environment for the overall well-being of a family?
Yeah. So obviously, I think it's like a super important thing, right? And I,
Right.
I think that most parents would agree. Of course, they want harmony in their home, right? Because they know that when there is harmony, then mornings start out with more ease, right? Instead of chaos. That meal times are about connection.
Right.
Bedtimes are peaceful wind downs instead of a struggle to like, you got to go to bed. And I think it means that as a parent, you're more grounded and more
Mm-hmm.
present, which obviously not only feels good to you, it's a nice way to live, but it's a beautiful way to show up for our families, because I think our energy and the way what we're thinking and feeling, and the way we show up, also our kids pick up on that, even when it's
Mm-hmm.
nonverbal. I think they connect and they know about it.
Oh yeah.
So yeah, that's an important thing. So that harmony is a really important thing to have in the house. It possibly could mean a deeper connection with your partner or your spouse, and siblings that bond together, right? So this harmony, this smooth flow of energy,
Mm-hmm.
is obviously important and helpful. I also think on top of that question about how important is it, I think another great question with that is, how do you do that? How do you?
Right.
Yeah, mostly. All right, so we agree it's a good thing to have. How do I do it? Right.
Yeah.
And so that has everything to do with, as I say, being in tune with yourself. It has to
Mm-hmm.
start there, because as parents, we kind of can leverage the idea that our energy influences the people in our family and use that to our advantage.
Right. Yeah, and that's such a good point. It's funny because I feel that way a lot in my home. Like in home, sometimes, I'm just caught up in the daily grind of trying to get things done and trying to, make sure everybody's taken care of. And I might get into that state of stress and overwhelm. And even though I don't necessarily say it or lead on, I still feel like sometimes Drayson picks up on my emotions, even if I'm trying to even keep my game face on, right? If I'm just
Yeah,
even
yeah.
trying to not necessarily lead on that I'm stressed out, I still feel like sometimes he very much picks up on my emotions. And I almost feel that that's a stronger part of Drayson because he's partially nonverbal.
Hmm.
And so he's much more observant than what we realize. But I think you bring up a really good point, because there's some days at the end of the day that I'm like, I just did everybody survive?
Mm,
you know,
yeah,
everyone got what they needed. The house isn't on fire. People are good. Like everyone got fed.
yeah,
All right, I'm calling it a day. You know,
yeah.
and I think that sometimes you wake up the next day and you feel like it's Groundhog's Day, and it's not in that state of what you just mentioned, that free flowing kind of energetic
Hmm.
state of just being in a harmonious environment.
Yeah.
And I think sometimes we don't always realize that because we're just caught up in the minutia of things,
Right.
for sure.
Yeah. So that's a beautiful thing to think about. What becomes possible when we as parents are, more often than not, right, feeling centered, feeling peaceful, and we radiate that energy. How does that change things with our the people we love the most,
Yeah.
right, with our own kids. Yeah,
Yeah.
so we can leverage that. There's a way to. I definitely know that it happens. That our energy or our thoughts and feelings, even if you're feeling like massive stress and you're smiling, of course he's going to know that.
Right.
People will pick
Yeah.
up on that, and the intimate connection of a mom and her child. That's the. I don't know if there's any stronger bond than that. So of
Yeah.
course they're going to know.
Yeah. Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah.
So what are some of the most common emotional challenges that parents of children with special needs face that you've seen, that you've been working with?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think there's like one really big one, and then the other ones kind of stem from that. So that big challenge is like, how do you handle the stress and the overwhelm that comes with this really unique kind of parenting? How do
Mm-hmm.
you, from maybe finding out the diagnosis and maybe never really kind of like handling that initial, maybe a shock to some people, maybe there's a sense that you knew, but maybe hearing it was like, wow. So from that to like everyday life, how do you handle all this stuff? And
Mm-hmm.
most of the time people just kind of put it aside because their own well-being, their own peacefulness is not a high priority because your child needs you, and you're the
Right.
who else is going to do, advocate for them and fight for them. So that's a big thing. Yet, even though it might not be a priority, it's still there. It still
Mm-hmm.
exists. You're still struggling, right? And that could sort of sometimes, cloud things and make everything harder.
Well, and I
And
would think
so,
too, if you stay in a state like that, there's eventually a burnout. There's a tipping point, right? I mean,
yeah,
I would assume.
right,
I don't think
yeah,
thank God I haven't reached that, but
yeah,
but
right,
I
yeah,
think,
yeah, of
but
course,
there's a threshold. So I think, would you agree that if those things aren't being addressed, that over time those things can compound and affect a person negatively in a way where then now you even have even more
yeah.
imbalance. Okay.
I totally
Yeah.
agree, and it's not just energetic or emotionally, but I think there's some pretty good research on the way that stress can physically affect our bodies, aches and
Yes.
pains and health and all that stuff. Of course, so that's well known, right? So yeah, it's important. It's hard to tell somebody who's like really, um, the priority is not their own well-being, but it's their kids. To tell them, you need to make it a priority. You need to take care of yourself. And most of the time, the answer is like, yeah, of course I know that. Yeah, I do, but I don't have time for that now. You
Right.
know, so it is massively important because obviously if you're in good health and good shape, then
Hmm.
it makes things easier. You could be a better parent. But I don't think people disagree with that. I think they just don't know how to do it. I
Right.
think that's
Yeah.
that's part of it.
And I think that personally, again, and I can only speak from my own personal experience, but you know, taking that hour a day or whatever it is for myself, it was really hard for me at first to do those things for myself
Yeah,
because of not guilt, but because I just felt like everything else had to be taken care of. And then I started to
well,
notice over
yeah,
time that I wasn't showing up well. I wasn't showing up in a way that, or I was coming into the room and you could just tell like I was setting everyone off because
yeah,
of my
yeah.
own, discourse. But
Well,
I, th- I think that that's something that we don't realize too, that if we don't address those things over time, that it can be even more damaging.
yeah, and yet all of those things that you're doing have to get done, and you're the
Right.
one, right? And
Yeah.
no one else is going to do it. So, what I like to talk about is to in light of all of that stuff, your own feelings, and maybe you don't want to, maybe you can't, whatever it is, but it still needs to be done.
Hmm.
What's important here is to learn how to get your nurturing in the moment or in those moments so
Hmm.
that you can address your own emotional needs, the energy, the intensity that you're feeling while physically at the same time
Hmm.
actively doing the stuff you need to do, staying, sometimes there's nothing, you can't delay the thing until later. It has to happen now. You have to take care of it now. And you're massively stressed. Well, you need
Hmm.
you need a way to handle those emotions so that you can like get rid of them, get clear, and then handle the thing, take the action you need to take. So
Hmm.
it is, to me, it's not just about getting through the days or, you know, it's more about enjoying your lives together every day by
Right.
getting your nurturing in the moment.
And embracing
So
that.
that
Yeah.
for sure, there needs to be a way to do that so that peace and um, inner stillness, the calmness,
Hmm.
become more often than not your emotional home base compared to like being stressed out and frazzled. Even though the situations and everything that's kind of causing that, they're not likely to change, right? Where the
Right.
things in our lives that are causing all that stress not likely to change, could possibly, but our children are going to be the
certain
way that
things,
they are.
yeah, certain
Right.
things aren't going to change at all. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Not so much. Yeah.
Yeah. And I know we've
Right.
spoken before about this, but something that I do want to touch base about for our listeners to talk about is, we're in our own heads, right? Sometimes I feel like I'm in my own head about things and I'm not necessarily realizing everything else around me because I'm just in that almost like survival mode. But there was a period of time in the beginning where I had to get out of my own head because I was almost in a stage of grief. And, we've had prior conversations about this, like it kind of ebbs and flows. And so do you feel that it's important for parents to really understand that they also have to get out of their headspace in a way to have effective parenting, to create that harmony environment? Because for me, that takes work, right? It's not easy for me to just snap out of it and do it. Like, okay, I'm not going to grieve anymore. Okay, I'm not going to be upset anymore. But
Of course.
but do you find that that's initially, especially like with parents who have a newly diagnosed child, that could be a potential to another layer, if you will, that they have to deal with?
Of course.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Especially in parenting, and I think in many other areas of life.
Oh yeah.
For sure. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's so. That's what it is to be human, I think,
Yeah. Yeah.
And yeah. And so one of the ways that we can maybe look at it is to allow yourself to really feel what you're feeling. So if it is grief, nobody likes that. Nobody wants to feel that, but yet here it is, right? We are feeling it. It
It's
is
there.
happening.
Right.
Yeah. Right. So that is kind of the reality. And so one of the things that help is to just allow yourself to feel it, just be with it. Go to a place where you can sit quietly for a little while and you're not likely to be disturbed for a few minutes, and just
Right.
allow yourself to feel it without trying to change it or push it away or do anything with it. Just notice it and feel it, and notice that there is somebody observing that feeling, like that you're not the grief itself. You feel it, you have it, but it's not really who you are.
Right.
So feeling that. And on top of that, I think it's also nice to have a perspective on where that grief is coming from, which I believe is because of love. You love this person, and that's why you're grieving. We don't grieve the people we don't care about, right? If
Right.
somebody we don't know passes away, it's like, you're kind of sad, but like it doesn't like crush you. It's like, whatever,
Right.
We didn't know them, we didn't love them, but but
Right.
if there's somebody that you love dearly, a child,
Yeah. Right.
yeah, of course.
Well, and I think, for us, it was for my husband and I, it was the idea of what we thought he was going to become, right? Or realizing that he might have to work harder at things in comparison to other kids, or his opportunities might look different than what we thought they were going to be. My husband was a huge athlete growing up, and one of the biggest pain points for him has been that he hasn't been able to play sports with our son. And that was really, really, really hard for him. Even now, we went through those waves of emotions, we kind of overcame them, but even now, Drayson's entering preteens, and we're noticing almost like a second wave of grief. We're realizing that, and it's kind of funny because he wasn't, he can't play football, but we got him into track. Basketball, no, because it's too much of a contact sport and that kid will foul out in 5 seconds out of the game. But I mean, it's just one of those things where what else can he do to try to also formulate that connection, because sports was really bonding for my husband growing up. And so I think that almost like we're entering another stage of grief, if you will, that we didn't necessarily anticipate. So I love that you bring up the point of just allowing yourself to feel it, because even I think sometimes to stop and take a moment it's a very difficult thing to do on a daily basis.
Yeah. So there's different ways that we handle emotions, and without getting really very deep into it, I'll really briefly explain. We feel something we don't like, we try to escape. We go to the movies, go somewhere, we try not to feel it. We can express it, right? We can scream and yell and express it, and that does kind of feel good, but it doesn't get rid of the feeling because it's still there, but it's good to be heard. So we can vent. We can resist it, just look away, just no, I don't want to feel it. Just kind of keep it pushed down, suppress the feeling. So the other thing is that you can let it go. And those are all natural ways. We all do all of them. There's nothing wrong with any of that. It's automatic. We don't think about it. but there's a way to let go of these feelings so that you can allow yourself just briefly to feel it and then let it go, let it release out of your energy. And so if we resist it, if we kind of try not to feel it or try to look away from it, I think that's the one thing that guarantees you're going to always feel it. What we resist persists.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think it's, you bring up a really interesting point about that, because do you feel that, and this might sound so silly, but do you feel that when you're talking or working with other parents, that when you tell them that they have a choice, right? Like one of the choices is just to feel it and try to let it go. Do you find that parents are a little awestruck by that? Because I think sometimes, again, when we get siloed in what we're doing, we forget that we almost have a choice, that we can choose that if we want to. Do you find that with some of the parents that you've helped?
Yeah, definitely. I think so. People, although letting go is a natural thing, no one really ever shows us how. And so we don't know it's an option. We don't know that we can do it, or that it's possible. So yeah, for sure.
I mean, just you saying it, well, just, no, I mean, but just you saying that alone kind of like, it brought this little light bulb moment for me right now by saying that, I mean, it's going, taking a few minutes, going to in a room alone just to allow yourself to feel, I mean, and just saying that you're giving yourself that choice. I've never really thought of that approach that way. And so I that's why I'm wondering, because, I find that sometimes even when I talk to parents about certain things, they don't realize that they had a choice in that matter. I can't choose the fact that Drayson has autism or not, but I can choose how I'm responding and how I'm handling it. And I think that took me a long time to learn that over the years, for sure.
Yeah. And what I find so interesting about all that stuff is that I don't think that we get a choice of how we feel. Like when something happens, we feel how we feel about it, right?
Right. The initial response, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. But I do think where we do have the say and when we do have the control is now that you're aware that you have a feeling you don't like, what can you do with it? You can hold on to it or you could let it go. And that's where the choice is. That's not like, well, I'm going to choose to be happy. I like that people say that. I think that's a good mindset, but I don't think that's practical. I don't think, well, I'm going to choose to be happy today, and then something terrible happens and you're not. It doesn't work well.
Yeah, I've started plenty of my days. I'm like, oh, today's going to be a great day. I choose to be happy. And then somebody cuts me off in traffic and I lose my mind.
Right. It's why not? That's a good mindset. Why not start with that? It's a good a good intention. Right. But I don't think as crazy as it will sound, maybe, I don't think that we have a choice of not just our own feelings, but our own thoughts. I don't think we get to choose them. They sort of just happen. They occur.
They just come. Yeah, they just pop up. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I think it's more in the response, and that's where I've identified a lot of things for me personally is how I'm responding, because I've gone into situations advocating for my son where I know for a fact I've looked like a total crazy person, and then coming out of it, I always feel bad because I never want to hurt somebody else's feelings or be mean or rude or angry, but at the same time I knew I had to do what I had to do for Drayson, and then I always ask myself, well, I mean, I could have taken a step back and I didn't, and when you're in that moment, it's so hard sometimes to navigate.
Of course.
Yeah.
Of course. Yeah. Because you're human and because there's a lot of intense emotions here. And one of them is love. And the other is the mama bear is fighting, it's all there and it's all valid, all important. All of it matters.
I know. And you did mention that bond, that child mother bond. And it's so true. I mean, the inner mama bear is a real thing for sure. I used to always kind of giggle about it before I had kids, like, oh, I don't understand, but it is 100% a real thing. And that bond is just, it's so fierce between me and my children. It's insane sometimes. And it's a wonderful thing. It's a wonderful feeling, but it's funny how quick I can flip a switch on certain things because of the fact that like you said, it really ultimately stems from a place of love because I love my kids. Yes. And so I'm realizing now that a lot of my reactions are just because of that,
Right.
So how can parents, begin to find that emotional balance while managing their everyday responsibilities? Because we've been talking about like the daily grind and, those types of things,
Right.
but how can parents begin to do that? You had mentioned kind of leaning into the emotions and allowing yourself to feel it.
Right. Sure.
Yeah.
So even before all that stuff, I think I was getting ahead of myself then, but I agree with what
okay.
I said. But I agree with me. So before that, what's important to really understand is the root cause of the stress.
Okay.
Why do we really have stress, right? So we're
Right.
going to back up to that for a second. And because I think understanding the root cause is important, because when you do, then you have a choice about what do you do with it. But you got to kind of know where it comes from. So in my view, our stress, our worry, our overwhelm don't come from the things that we think they come from, like the challenges we face every day, or the stuff that comes up in life that you have no control over, or even your child's difficult behavior. I know it seems that way. Something happens and it feels, like it causes stress. That's not really the cause. It's not really what's happening. The real reason that we're stressed out and we're overwhelmed is because we haven't learned yet how to be more in tune with ourselves to eliminate stress. So as I say, we don't really have a stress and overwhelm problem. We have what I call an inner harmony problem.
Okay.
Right? And so so until you solve that inner harmony problem, the things that you do will not likely have a major effect, because it's really not the deeper root cause of what's going on. There's until we have harmony within ourselves, our struggles are likely to continue, because there's always going to be situations that upset us and people to deal with and all that kind of stuff. Life doesn't stop lifing you.
Right.
That's the thing. So if you are not in tune or not in harmony with yourself, everything is going to set you off. Right. So, it's just part of life. But when we are in tune with ourselves, all of those things that trigger us and set us off lose their grip. They lose their grip on you. And so what I mean by that is that we don't get as easily derailed or as easily triggered when, something happens, and, so you're not thrown into a loop or put off your focus anymore. And like I said, it really is in the way that you react and respond to those difficult moments that makes a difference, which is why we need to understand like where they come from. Right. And then also, it's good to understand it, but you need a way to handle it. You need a method or a technique, and perhaps somebody to guide you on this, where like, all right, what do I do with it now? The awareness is good, but it's not the whole picture.
Not the whole picture. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
It's about really getting in tune with yourself so that you can eliminate these unwanted or the negative feelings on the spot while taking the right actions. Do what you need to do. Sometimes you need to fight. Sometimes you need to advocate in a strong, powerful way. You got to show up. Yes. But when the mama bear appears, is it out of high energy, a lot of anger and stuff, because maybe that's what provokes what brings her out in the first place. But that mama bear energy does get things done. It does get people to pay attention. Like, wow, we got to not do it. Whatever. And if you're in a school meeting, sometimes
it works.
You do that. Right. But also, it doesn't feel good to the mama, right? It doesn't feel good. Forget about how it makes other people feel. That's kind of not your problem. I mean, right? You're dealing with you and your child. So what if you can show up with that same intensity and get those same results, but you can feel more peaceful doing it, more in control and stuff, so that your actions are more effective maybe, and you're not like losing your mind.
Yeah. And I love how you're identifying it as inner harmony, because that's such a great way to put it. Because I think sometimes we don't always, it's very displacing when you don't feel that flow, that sense of ease. Like there's been plenty of other situations where I've been very assertive and I walk out and go, oh, that went really well and I feel really good about that. And then there are other times where I'm like, oh my gosh, they're going to tell everybody else I'm just batshit crazy and this will be fun,
Yeah. So again, whose problem is that? Yeah.
Right. Exactly. Yeah, you're right. Yeah, you're absolutely right. So
I know, but we don't want to be perceived like that. But I understand. There's another way to do it. Again, one of my favorite questions is what else is possible. That opened a lot for me. When my brother asked me that, I was like, wow, InTune Parents is possible.
Right. Yeah.
So
it's true.
Not struggling. What else? What becomes possible when you let go of the struggle? Then how do you show up? I would say that's even more powerful than showing up with anger, even though anger is a very high energy, high powerful thing. It does get things done. It just doesn't feel good.
It just doesn't feel good afterwards. Yeah.
Right.
Well, for our listeners listening in today, we're going to pause for this first half of the show with Russ, and we're going to tune in next week for part 2, where Russ is actually going to talk about some strategies to help parents overcome unique challenges with their special needs children. But in the meantime, this concludes our episode for today. Thank you so much for tuning in. And Russ, thank you so much for all of your insight and knowledge today. I appreciate you so much. If you have questions, comments, or even a show topic that you would like to hear about, please feel free to send me an email at info@piecesformypuzzle.com. I would love to hear from you. Don't forget to like us on Facebook and Instagram if you haven't already. And please feel free to subscribe to our YouTube channel as well, which is at Pieces for My Puzzle. If you like what you're hearing, please spread the word to others so we can help more friends and family out in the community. And thanks again for tuning in. Until next time, keep working on your puzzle. And remember, it doesn't have to be solved all in a day. Take care.